What is up, guys? Welcome to the Underdog Talk, the world's most underrated podcast on earth. And there's just something about the underdog. But today, I am joined and honored, I have to say that, by having a true basketball legend, a renowned basketball coach, a mentor, and a strategist who's left, an and I don't can't even speak. I'm so excited. A wild mark on the basketball court. Ladies and gentlemen, Coach Matt Doherty, how are you doing today, and how are you and the family, sir?
Oh, good, good. We've enjoyed our time. This recording's taking place the day after, uh, July 4th,
Yes.
and it's a great holiday for our country, and our families get to celebrate. So we had a nice, enjoyable time with family and friends.
You can't beat that. And I was watching the fireworks too, Coach, and something about that holiday just brings the joy to everyone. It's such an amazing holiday, and obviously remembering everything. And I truly agree on that. Now, for those who don't know, and Coach, I've got to throw this out. I actually went to University of Chapel Hill preschool, and I actually went with your daughter. So this is a small world, underdog talk. And not only did I want the coach on just because he is such an amazing coach, but I also felt like this is a small world, and we all got to reconnect in some way. So, coach, just got to
Well,
tell you that.
small world, yeah, small world indeed. Yeah, that was 20 plus years ago. So time flies, Teddy.
Time does fly, and since then you've transitioned to so many different roles. But I want to look at kind of your career starting, on the court. So, coach, the $1 million question: why basketball? Why basketball?
Well, Teddy, I grew up on Long Island. My dad was a baseball player, minor league player. Where I grew up, most people started out playing basketball. Soccer wasn't a thing back then. Your sports were basically the four primary sports at the time: football, basketball, baseball, hockey. Actually, we played a lot of street hockey. The Rangers were big, and then the Islanders started in the late 70s, early 80s. And I grew up about 5 miles from where the New York Islanders played. I grew up also the New York Nets played there. So back when they were in the ABA. And I just, my dad signed me up for basketball camp in fourth grade, and I loved it. I just loved the game. I loved the excitement. I loved the fact that it was an individual game and a team game wrapped up as the same. You could showcase your skills, but you had to do it in the confines of a team. You shared a ball. There was spontaneous movement. Um, yeah, and so I loved it, and I felt I could be good at it. So in sixth grade, I quit baseball and just focused on basketball, and was always tall, but I didn't want to be stuck as a center, and so I always played with older guys. Sixth grade, I was playing with high school kids, some college players at this park near my house, and there were great players there. Bob McKillop, the coach who just retired at Davidson College, was there. Some NBA players, some ABA players, and I was always trying to get in the best games, even at a young age. And it was just like I was upset when we went on a family trip because it would take me away from the park for a week or two, and just obsessed with it. And fortunately, I was tall, and I was playing up. I got to develop guard skills. So, you know, I'm 6'7", but 6'7" non-athlete doesn't cut it as a center in major college basketball. So I was really a forward and could pass, handle, and shoot the ball, and was blessed to be able to be recruited and play at North Carolina.
Yeah, and coach, I'm 5'6", so basketball was never really an option unless I wanted to kind of be a Muggsy Bogues or really try and set a historic uh example. But obviously UNC is where you shone, you played, you were a starter, on one of the best college basketball teams of all time. And a little birdie told me that you played with Michael Jeffrey Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time.
Yeah.
What was that like, starting alongside the greatest basketball player of all time?
Yeah. Well, we had our starting five. My sophomore year, we won a national championship. Geez, how long ago was that? 40 years ago. Michael Jordan, James Worthy, who was a Hall of Famer, Sam Perkins, who played 17 years in the NBA had a great career, and Jimmy Black was our point guard. And we went to the Final Four the year before and lost in the finals. Our best player, Al Wood, graduated, and then Michael came in and kind of filled that position. And when people ask what was it like to play with Michael, I say it was easy, right? Because he was on your side. He was on my team. And so when you have the best player ever to play on your team, it makes the game a little easier. He was also a great teammate. He just cared about one thing, that was winning. And if that meant he had to score 30 points, he would do it. But if it meant he had to pass the ball, he would do it. And he was just so passionate about winning. So it was easy to play with Michael, and his competitive fire was extraordinary. His energy level was extraordinary. That's a gift. The energy is a gift. People underestimate or don't value energy that much. And I'll tell you a story, Teddy. I was working for the Indiana Pacers and their legendary executive, Donnie Walsh. And I would go sit with Donnie whenever I was at a game courtside. Donnie's from New York, played at North Carolina, room with Larry Brown. And he's from the Bronx. And so I'd sit next to him, and he had this deep, gruff voice. And one day he goes, Matty, the most important thing that I've realized after 40 years in this business, and I'm hanging on every word, I'm thinking, here comes some just magic that only I will know. And he hesitates, and he said, the most important thing in evaluating players and teams, the most important ingredient, energy. I'm like, what? Like, that's it? But you think about it, and I look at the great players like Michael Jordan, at the time, Jason Kidd, LeBron, Dirk Nowitzki, Chris Paul. I just recently at that point coached at SMU, and we had a nice practice facility. So a lot of NBA teams would come in and practice at our place before they play the Mavericks. So I got to see firsthand the energy that now I recalled. Guys who just came in the gym and loved the game, loved being in practice, loved staying after practice and playing horse. And that was those guys. And Michael had extreme energy. And so, when you're playing 82 games in the regular season, and back then when Michael was playing, you had back-to-back games. Back when when he started playing, they flew commercially. They would have to take the first flight out of a commercial on a commercial flight, so they wouldn't miss the next game. So if they had a game at night, they had a 6:30 flight out the next day on a commercial flight. And so you land, you do your walkthrough, you take a nap, and then you got to bring it. And it could be let's say you're playing in Detroit, the next night you're playing in Milwaukee. In February, it's snowing, it's cold, your ankles hurt, your back stiff. Are you going to go out and bring great energy? And I think that's the greatness, the underlying greatness of the best players, especially Michael Jordan.
I totally agree on that, Coach. Energy is energy. Now, when you were playing at UNC, did you ever see yourself becoming a coach, let alone becoming a coach at the school you played at?
Yeah, no, I didn't want to coach. I had no plans of coaching. And I got cut by the NBA, the Cleveland Cavaliers. I went to work on Wall Street and I hated it. And I remember being there for about 4 years, and I'd look at out the window, and when the March Madness would come around, people would come up to me and ask me to help them fill out their brackets. And I remember, I think it was '89, and Seton Hall was playing Michigan in the finals. And I thought, what did PJ Carlissimo and Steve Fisher have in their resume that I didn't have? And I said to myself, my resume was as good or better than theirs, at that point in my life. And so it started to creep into my head. And then I quit my job, moved to Charlotte, still was looking to get into the real estate business. And I took a part-time job with a guy Ed Sockwell, who actually is Luke May's grandfather, Drake May's grandfather. He's no longer living, but he gave me a job as a part-time in his executive search company. Well, he also had an AAU team. And so he asked me if I'd coach the 8th grade team, and I did. And once I started to do that, I fell in love with coaching. And, planning practice, picking up the kids, dropping them off. One of my point guard was Jeff McGinnis, who ended up playing at North Carolina. And so I was doing the radio at Davidson at the time, because I thought I would want to get into media. Well, Davidson fired their coach and hired Bob McKillop. And Bob was my high school coach. So Bob hired me as an assistant basketball coach. So that's how I got into coaching. Yeah, and then literally 11 years later, I quit my job in New York, and 11 years later, I was the head coach at Notre Dame. And then 12 years later, I'm the head coach at North Carolina. It's funny. I tell people all the time, your life's nothing but a series of decisions and dealing with the consequences. And the better decisions you make, the better your life will be. And your life's impacted by 3 things, Teddy: the people you meet, the books you read, and the trauma in your life. And so you can control the first 2 to a certain degree. You could, you can read whatever books you want. You can listen to whatever podcast you want. And you intentionally try to meet good people. And when you make a decision to play for Bob McKillop in high school, or to play at the University of North Carolina, you're going to be around good people. And so I was blessed to make those decisions at an early age.
And I totally agree on those 3, kind of key pillars, Coach. Now, as a coach, I've always wondered, and you created such a winning, team culture. What are the elements you believe, that contribute to a successful team dynamic, as a head coach?
Yeah, I think it starts, and now I'm in the leadership space, Teddy. Yeah. So I'm an executive coach. So when I got let go in 2003, I went on a leadership journey. When I got let go at North Carolina, I went on a leadership journey to try to figure out, okay, they question my leadership. They say I'm not a good leader. I'm going to go on a leadership journey and try to get better. And I think as a coach, as a player, as an athlete, you do those things. I know you're a bodybuilder, so after a show, you probably watch the film, right? And you say, okay, how can I improve that pose? Where do I need more definition? And so you were used to being scrutinized. You're used to dealing with failure. And I think that's one of the things about sports that teach young people is that you're going to fail. And what are you going to what are you going to do when you face adversity? And so Nelson Mandela, my favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes is Nelson Mandela said, "I never lose, I either win or I learn." And so I went on a leadership journey and started to take classes at UVA, the Darden School and Wharton, these executive classes, just 1 week classes on leadership. And I'm sitting in these classes and they're talking about emotional intelligence and they're talking about culture. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I would have taken these classes before I was a head coach, I might still be the head coach, because leadership is a learned behavior. Most people think, oh, he's a born leader. Well, some are born with some, advantages, maybe communication, maybe charisma, but you don't have to have charisma to be a good leader. You just really have to have several things. And to me, you have to have some emotional intelligence. And that's something that I learned of in 2003 that I was not aware of. That was a blind spot for me. We all have blind spots, and you want to try to narrow those blind spots as much as possible. And to do that, you need, I call them truth tellers. Who is the truth teller in your life that's going to say, you got a blind spot. You need to improve in this area. And then can you take that without being defensive, right? So Teddy, you're on stage doing your poses and you have a coach. I know you, I was looking at some information. I know you had a coach and your coach helped you. But the coach is going to say things to you that you might not like to hear, right? Like, Teddy, you got to get your cast got to get stronger. Teddy, you got to hold that pose longer, man. Initial reaction might be, to go at somebody, but you got to take a deep breath, sit back, and listen. And you don't have to like it, but you got to listen to it, and then it's up to you to respond to it and either improve or just discard it. But that's you have to have truth tellers in your life. So I went on a leadership journey. One of the things that I realized is the value of core values, the importance of core values. A friend of mine, Matt Karras, is in the military and lieutenant colonel, and gave me a challenge coin. And we talked a lot about core values and how to develop them. And so, to me, it all starts with the foundation of core values. You have to have a vision. You have to know where you're going. And you have to be able to communicate that vision. And then you have to operationalize your core values into daily behaviors. So my core values are respect, trust, commitment, positivity. And what does respect look like? What does trust look like? What does commitment look like? What does positivity look like? So, you and I grew up different times, different locations, different family members. So respect might be different to me than it is to you. To me, a thing of respect would be somebody walks in the room, you stand up and you shake their hand, you introduce yourself, you make good eye contact. When you leave a room, leave it nicer than you found it. Okay. So those are two things that I stress with teams that I coach. And, you have to operationalize it. You have to talk about them. You have to make them habits. So those are rooted in the core value of respect. So Dean Smith was so brilliant, Teddy. As I studied leadership, I kept reflecting on Dean Smith and all the things that he did to intentionally drive culture. And he was ahead of his time, because every organization is made up of three things: talent, systems, and culture. And the better your systems, the better your culture, the better your talent will perform. The better talent you'll retain, the better talent you'll attract. And Coach Smith had a great system and he had a great culture. And at the end of the day, I say culture is king, because you could have a great system, but if your culture is not so good, you're not going to perform that well. You could have an average system. And let's talk sports. Okay, you just run a basic man-to-man and you run high pick and roll offense. Nothing too crazy, nothing's too intricate. But if you have a great culture and guys are playing hard, sharing the ball, caring about each other, you'll win a lot of games. Yeah. But you could have an intricate system where, let's say, go to an extreme for a basketball fan, the Princeton offense. But if you have a bad culture, they're not going to pass the ball. They're not going to cut hard. They're not going to do the little things to help a teammate be successful. So you got to create that culture. And Coach Smith's core values for the team were play hard, play smart, play together. So in practice, he would have an emphasis of the day. And quite often it would be hit the first open man you see, which sprouted from the core value of play together. Yeah. So if you were open and I didn't pass you the ball, Coach Smith would blow his whistle and he would call me by my first name, full name. He had this nasally tone. He'd say, Matthew, why didn't you throw Theodore the ball? He'd probably call you Theodore. And if I didn't have a good answer, obviously, and then he'd put our team on the baseline and we'd run a sprint, and then everybody'd be mad at me because I made them run because I didn't throw the ball to Theodore. So now the next play, Theodore would throw me the ball and I'd score a layup and he'd blow the whistle and he'd say, Matthew, aren't you glad Theodore threw the ball to the first open man he saw? And so as a leader, you have to be very intentional. I think the leaders are in charge of three things. They should cast the vision, drive the culture, and engage in large business transactions. And so, you can't delegate culture, like as a head coach or a CEO. You can't delegate and say, my assistant's going to be in charge of culture. And then all of a sudden, they're trying to discipline somebody or address it, and you're in a rush, and you say, oh, screw that. Let's just get to the meeting. Yeah. No, you can't, because it's like raising kids, right? If the mother says it's important to come to the dinner table on time with your hair combed, hands washed, face washed, and sit up straight, and the dad doesn't really care about it, the kid's getting mixed signals and he knows it, and he'll play one off the other. And that leads to a bad culture.
I love everything you just said, Coach Matt. And now you kind of addressed it in terms of the adversity to a point. But what strategies do you employ to help your players, when they had challenges and setbacks both on and obviously off the court? I think we're all having adversity off the court. And how do you cultivate that resilience with your team, Coach?
Yeah. No, great question. I think a couple of things. It's kind of two-part question to me. A coach has to have empathy, right? A leader has to have empathy. I think that a friend of mine once said, vulnerability is the new invincibility. So by sitting down and talking, I think spending time, because the most precious thing we have is time, right? So by spending time with your players, your employees, sitting down with them and talking with them, they realize that you care.
Yes.
Right. And so I think then there's that emotional connection, and that helps them get through some adversity. So when I talk about resiliency, I do a talk on resiliency, and I think the first thing I talk about a flywheel is you got to plan for it. Like plan for adversity. It's coming. Now you can't plan for everything. Like who could have planned for COVID?
No.
But you got to plan that in basketball, a player's going to get hurt. A player's going to get in foul trouble. A player's going to get sick. Okay, so do you build your bench? Do you have an offense where it's not just centered on one player totally? So that way, if that player goes down with an injury or foul trouble or illness, the rest of your team doesn't panic, right? So it's next man up. So is your bench strong enough? Is there a mindset that they can overcome this adversity? And then you got to develop the team. Once you get the players and you recruit to it, like you recruit to adversity. Like we're going to face some tough times, whether it be a basketball coach or a business or the military, they're going to be tough times.
Yeah.
There's a great book about the endurance. It's Ernest Shackleton. He was a gentleman who tried to explore the South Pole. And they didn't reach the South Pole. They became shipwrecked, but everyone survived.
Wow.
And when he was recruiting, men at the time for his journey, he basically, his advertisement was very, very grim and dark. It was like, challenging journey, enduring extreme cold and darkness, chance of not returning, just that was kind of his ad to recruit men for this journey. And so you have to recruit to the adversity, and then you have to train for it. It's like, why do you have fire drills, right? You have to train for it. Okay, like Coach Smith would always do it. Like, all right, 5 minutes to go, down 10. The starters against the second unit, and the second unit was up 10 with 5 minutes to go. Okay, here's what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do offensively, defensively. So that way, when we get into the game and we're in that situation, and you may never be in that situation, but we were against Virginia in, I think, 83. And he said, call timeout. And he smiled and he just said, we've practiced this. Wouldn't it be fun to come back and win this game? And we did. So, I think you have to develop the team, recruit to it. You have to then train to it, which I just touched on. So you plan for it, you develop your team by recruiting talent and a mindset, you train for it, and then you embrace the moment. Like, guys, isn't this, like Coach Smith did, isn't this exciting? We're down 10 with 5 minutes to go. What? Isn't this exciting? Like, wouldn't it be fun to come back and win this game? So you embrace the moment, and then you execute. And sometimes you have to adapt because you can't plan for everything, right? Again, COVID. And then once you're done, you debrief. You come together as a staff and get input from your players. Okay, what happened there? What could we have done better? How can we prepare for this in the future? Then you go back to the flywheel. The top of the flywheel is plan. You plan again, plan practice, plan what types of players you want, develop your team, train for it, embrace it, execute, debrief, boom. It's constant. And the one thing that's constant in this world is change.
Yes.
So you've got to continue to think of what could happen next. What if? I always said you need to have a what if coach on your staff. A speaker, former coach, Kevin Eastman, talks about that too. Who on your staff is a what if person? So, Teddy, you're doing this podcast. What if the StreamYard service doesn't come on? What if I don't show up? What if I show up late? What if I don't respond to your questions? What if I'm sick? What? like what could possibly go wrong within reason.
Yeah.
If a meteor hits your studio, okay, what are the chances of that happening? If the Detroit Lions win the Super Bowl, what are the chances of that? Why the hell do you have a Detroit Lion helmet?
That's a good. It was a T.J. Hawkinson signed helmet. We have had a few Lions players on, so I actually don't know why I still have that on the set. But that is a good question. The Cowboys one I can answer because I'm a Cowboys fan, and we had a legendary wide receiver Brandon Cooks on. But Coach, the Lions helmet, not sure I have a good answer for that.
And it's bigger than the Dallas. You're in the DC. You still living in the DC area?
I am.
And you don't have what's it now? The Commander?
Commanders, yeah.
No Commander's helmet?
No Commander's helmet. No, sir. Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing, right?
Yeah. No. So anyway, but hopefully that answered
yes.
Your question and addressed some of the things that you wanted to talk about.
It did. And I have two really more final questions. Throughout your career as a basketball coach, what would you say is the most important lesson you have learned about the game?
I think that there's the science of coaching and the art of coaching. And the science of coaching is the technical side of it, the X's and the O's, the strategy. And the art of coaching is the emotional side, the connectivity with the players. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier is the organizational triangle, talent, systems, and culture, where culture is king, where culture is more important than systems. So, the connectivity with the players is more important than the system you're running. And I love tinkering with the game. I love tweaking, offensive and defensive strategies, but it's more important that the players feel good about who they're playing for, what they're playing for, and who they're playing with than what type of offense we're running.
I totally agree. Now, this is the $2 million question, Coach. Finally, what advice would you give to an aspiring basketball coach who's just starting their kind of coaching journey like you once were? And then, what are the key principles or values they should prioritize to build, a successful coaching career like you did, sir?
Well, first of all, I try to talk them out of coaching. I think it's an extremely difficult profession now more than ever before because of in the college space, the NIL money and the transfer portal. And so I think that I would try to talk them out of it. And then if they were committed to doing it, I think, the most important thing you to do, I talked about it earlier, your life's impacted by the people you meet, the books you read, and the trauma in your life. So I would, meet good people, try to develop relationships with good people. And how do you do that? You work their camps, you go to clinics, you reach out, be tastefully persistent, because you can't do it alone. And people aren't going to hire you unless they know, like, and trust you. So it's so important to develop good relationships in the space. And I was blessed to have Bob McKillop, Dean Smith, Roy Williams, in on my personal board of directors. And so, create a board of directors, personal board of directors with people that can help your career. And you can intentionally create those relationships there. It's more difficult to do that, but if you don't, it's very rare you will get a chance to advance your career.
I just totally agree on all of that, Coach. Coach, thank you so much for taking your time to talk about leadership. And I really love those three core qualities, and that's got me thinking a lot. Now, before we go, what are you working on now? And I know that you're doing what are you doing right now? I'm very interested in learning what you are doing now after coaching, and is there anything you want to plug, Coach?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, I'm still coaching. I'm an executive coach, so I'm a Vistage chair. Vistage is the oldest executive coaching organization in the country. We've been around 65 years. So I work with small to mid-sized business owners in generally the Charlotte market in a peer advisory group, and we bring in guest speakers. We process issues. It's pretty powerful, very fulfilling work. And then I do keynote talks. So I give talks on leadership, team building, and I enjoy doing that. It gets me on the stage. I get to, hopefully impact the lives of the people in the audience. I'm now co-hosting a show, New to the Street Leadership. It's sponsored by Sector Spiders on Bloomberg TV. That'll air monthly, starting this month, the end of this month. I'm filming Friday. And so we'll take a business or sports leader and talk to them about leadership. And I just think it's the most important topic that's not formally taught. So it all, every organization comes down to leadership, and one person can make or break an organization. And you look at Nick Saban at Alabama. Alabama struggled in football for so long. He takes over. So one person. I think it was Malcolm. Martin Luther King said, "One man makes a majority," and I think that one person can make a huge impact on an organization with their core values, with their determination, with their grit, with their drive, with casting the vision, selling the vision, and then making tough decisions. Sometimes you have to eliminate people, and that's not easy, but you got to hold people accountable. So, yeah, the executive coaching, keynote talks, co-hosting the show on New to the Street on Bloomberg TV. Those are kind of the main things I'm doing. And I've written a book called Rebound from Pain to Passion. And that really is kind of the foundation of my leadership practice.
And Coach's links will all be in this YouTube bio. I mean, please check out Matt's, social media. Do you have an Instagram? Do you have a Twitter as well?
I have it all. Yes, at Doherty Coaching. You can go to my website, dohertycoaching.com, and you have all the content. I do a podcast. I have a newsletter, social media. So dohertycoaching.com, and you can get everything you need.
All that will be in the bio. And first person to, follow Matt's new podcast, send me a screenshot and I'll get you a special gift out to you. I mean, I would love to listen to the leadership aspect that both you and your guest bring in. And you should bring Jay Billis on, because he was on this podcast and he was raving about you. And obviously I know you guys are good friends and stuff, and the stuff he brings to the table is just wonderful as well.
Jay is a friend, and a good friend. I value my relationship with him. If Jay and I can reach across the aisle from Duke to North Carolina, I think that we probably should be going. Maybe we should be on Capitol Hill, and lead the Democrats and the Republicans and reach across the aisle. If he and I can communicate, become friends as Duke and Carolina rivals, why can't the Dems and the Republicans come together as one? But Jay's he's a good man first and foremost, and he's really good at what he does. So thank you.
Yes, and he was raving highly about you, Coach, as well. And Guys, don't forget to check out all of Coach's links, which again will be in this bio. Coach, one more time, thank you so much for taking your time to come on the podcast and talk about leadership and give the advice. I hope it helps that one person who is looking to grow in their leadership role. Guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Until next time, guys, Underdog out.